Listen up, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and agents. You're in the right place. Unlocking the secrets to real estate investing and entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Titanium Vault, hosted by RJ Bates III. Here's RJ.
Hello and welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with Nathan Brooks. Nathan, how are you doing today?
I am well, sir. How are you?
Fantastic. So why don't you take a second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do in real estate investing?
Yes. Well, I just first want to say thank you again for opportunity to be on here with you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I'm Nathan Brooks. I'm out of the Kansas City market, and I am a full-time real estate investor. And our focus is primarily twofold. We have a flipping business that we use both to sell turnkey properties. So we'll flip about 150 houses this year. Most of those, probably 70–80%, will go turnkey to clients all over the U.S. and internationally. And then we also, will hold, we're looking to hold about 50 this year of those. And then second, we just started our own retail side of MLS business as well. So we have some things that obviously symbiotic relationship to our real estate business, but also then some big goals that we're fired up about on that side.
Fantastic. So let's go back to the beginning. How did you get started in real estate investing?
That's a great question. I was sitting at lunch with my wife in a cool kind of bar pub thing, and overheard somebody chatting about real estate. And I'd been fired up about the concept for some time, and just kind of started hearing this conversation happening. And lo and behold, 2 or 3 weeks later, I end up in a quote unquote, and that those are painful air quotes at this point, but business partner who turned out to be just not a good person at all. But through that, I learned some excruciating lessons about how business operates and what the good and bad and ugly of real estate. And so that was kind of my first day I bought a house. I bought two.
Awesome. That's I think you're the first guest that's ever said they bought two on their first day. So there you go. Congratulations. So what were you doing with those two? Were you going to flip them?
Yeah, we were going to flip them. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was scuzzy banker, terrible business partner. Not that there's anything wrong with, kind of day labor, and there's a place for everything, right? But the labor we had on the jobs wasn't that great. And I really set it up to win.
Right. So did you have any background in construction, or what made you dive into rehabbing properties to begin with?
Oh, no. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea.
So most people, when they get started in the real estate investing, like the easiest way to get started is in wholesaling. But more often than not, I hear people say they started off by rehabbing properties because I guess maybe it's ingrained in us. That's what we see on HGTV and things along those lines. So it's like the first thing we do is we go and we buy a flip. That's the same thing I did. I had background in contracting, but the first thing I did in real estate was I went and bought a flip. So you got into these two properties and you didn't have a whole lot of experience, and obviously you had some issues there. How did you survive those issues?
Well, that's an interesting question in and of itself, because in one sense I didn't. It took a long time for the kind of the initial problems to come to fruition, if you will. But we ended up losing all of the properties, or the vast majority. And so, it was a painful lesson. So we went a couple years, we bought, a dozen properties or so,
right,
and eventually filed for bankruptcy. And so, that that's tough when you go through all that and you put that kind of effort in, and you have those kind of big dreams and it fails. So it sucks, and it's not fun, and so then you have to regroup, right?
Right. So, going through that process, and I was going to ask you this question anyway, so let's go ahead and jump into it. For someone who's wanting to get started into this, what advice would you give them? What's your number one thing that you would tell a newer investor to do when they get started, or maybe to avoid?
Yeah. I think the number one thing, I think the guru worship part is overrated, and I think there's a lot of folks out there that charge a ridiculous amount of money for not great service. But I just really fundamentally think that a mentor of sorts is a great gift, and to just understand, and I've told this story over and over, and so forgive me if people have listened to other podcasts that I've been on, but I had a mentor who, he didn't know he was going to be my mentor, but, his name's Rob out of Florida, and Rob, it took me a gajillion times to get him to sit down and go over what was going on, and I didn't understand why it was so hard to get him on the phone. And I'm like, or get him in person. And I'm like, well, hey, I'm gonna buy you lunch. Why wouldn't you want free lunch? And
right,
and lo and behold, as I started to get to know him, and now he is more of a colleague and still very much a mentor, but different relationship. But to be able to have somebody there to say, RJ, this is not a good idea, man. Or, hey, RJ, this deal looks killer. You should take it down, but let's look at these 3 things, because this is, in this area of town, these are the comps you should look at. Or, man, have you double checked that foundation? Because, I remember the 42nd time I had to dig and push on this one job. This is the
right.
thing I ran into. So, one of the things we learned in business, and even where we sit now, there's nothing that solves the time and experience for you.
Right.
So the only way you get time and experience is somebody else who has a time and experience. And so to me, when you can have that relationship, or you have a cohort of people doing them together so you can mitigate some risk or share some risk. But I think there's nothing better than reading books. I'm a huge book reader, and I'm constantly trying to devour more books, more information, talking to guys like you who are in the business doing cool stuff, have big goals, and then also education. So even for us now, we're in a mastermind, and so we get to hang out with people and ask questions of people who are have the same kind of problems, and so it is at every level so important to have that relationship and that person or group of people to be able to knock ideas around with.
Right. And I second everything that you just said there, because I get asked the question all the time, like, how can I get into real estate investing? And it's not as simple as, here's how you analyze numbers, or here's how you manage a rehab. We're constantly learning, and like you said, being a part of a mastermind, going to your local real estate investing association meetings, reading books. I mean, there's so many like free content. You've been on the Bigger Pockets podcast. Biggerpockets.com is a great resource for newer investors and even people that are more experienced. I mean, I still find myself going to Bigger Pockets all the time to either search for a new way to market, or a new strategy, or just double checking, am I doing it the right way? I'm just making sure. And there's tons of content out there, and it's very important that you don't think that it's going to be taught to you in a couple of days by one guru. I'm a firm believer in that. And so did you go through an education program like that to begin, or did you just learn through the School of Hard Knocks along your way?
Yeah, I was definitely the latter. I did not have a guru. I had the anti-guru. And I thought I had somebody who was going to teach me construction business. And, And it wasn't, but that's certainly nothing to dwell on, and it was a great lesson to me to know the rules of the game before you play it. And boy, if you don't know something, then get people around you who know and who will be honest with you. And
Right.
and so, for me, it was kind of more, the school of hard knocks is one thing, but then it's also don't make the same mistakes, and then
Right.
Understand what your strengths are, understand the type of person you are, understand what you want. Gosh, I mean, you might want a real estate business, but you still really have no idea what that actually means.
Right. Fail often, but always fail forward, right? Like if you fail, that's you shouldn't consider yourself a failure. I mean, I screw up things all day, every day, but most people would consider me a successful real estate investor, and that's just because I'm learning from those mistakes. I still make mistakes in my business all the time, but I'm a young guy, and so as I make those mistakes, I'm learning, and as a company, we're writing those things down, and we're making sure we don't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. It's like I said, the construction. You said you thought you had a guy that was going to teach you construction. You're successful now. You're doing 150 deals a year. Would you go out and say that construction is still not easy for you?
It's a different problem. And actually, when you said make mistakes all the time and learning from them, and I wrote down also having a system to retain that learned information so that you can, so it's one thing to learn what it is, but then the next thing is actually to have a system and that builds a process.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you screwed it up, you can probably figure out what the right way is if you haven't already figured it out. So, within construction, I'm not gonna say construction's easy, because it's not. And I wrote a blog at one point that something to the effect of, real estate investing is simple, but it's not easy. And I think you could use the same, concept to construction, right? It's a house, we have rough in, or we have demo, we have rough in, we have, flooring and sheetrock and paint, and then we have finish, electrical, carpentry, roof, exterior, blah, blah, blah. We can, but then for us, the thing that we've been working on in the construction is it really is easy at some point for you, that 1 a month is easy, and then 2 a month is easy, and then 5 a month is easy. So for us, we've been trying to solve the problem of what does it look like to do 12 to 14 a month. And so, we have much more specific design and scope, processes, and we have much more dialed in project management, because, you might have 30, 40, 50, 60 guys in the field on one single day today, out there doing different stuff. So, it's a different problem to solve.
And talking about your systems, I'm assuming because of the type of product that you're selling or keeping, you are buying a very specific type of property, correct?
Yeah, I would say that is accurate for sure.
Yeah, and that helps you with your systems, right? You're not buying across the board. You're not buying everything within your market. You've narrowed down to your niche. You know exactly what you're going to buy, and then that's what you're talking about. You know exactly how you're going to finish it out and how your contractors are going to do the work on that property. Does that help you build those systems within your business?
For sure. And I think you nailed something right there too, which, we briefly talked about before we started rolling, which was, you kind of got to know what the end looks like before you start.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that everybody's going to know that specifically at the beginning. But you have to be thinking that question, like, what is the end result that I'm looking for here? And I know for us, we were in the very early stages buying, basically, oh, this looks like a deal, boom, bought it.
Right.
This looks like a deal, boom, bought it. But we didn't practice anything well. And so all of a sudden we realize we have all these different projects, and managing them is a nightmare, and trying to figure out, well, hey, why didn't you put this cabinet in this one, and why didn't we paint this, and why is this grout color this? Well, hey, guess what? Hey, dummy, it's your fault, Nathan, because you didn't make sure the guys have the tools to know. So we literally have a selection sheet and a scope sheet that sits in every single project of every single rehab we have. So you're not sure? Well, guess what? It's on the wall.
Wow. See, and that's the kind of, repeatedly, as I have guests on the podcast, I sometimes worry that the content is going to get muddied down because I have successful investors on here. And as I have successful rehabbers like yourself, you keep saying the same things. It's all about building your systems. Luke Weber in Las Vegas, Nevada, successful rehabber, doing similar volume to what you're doing. He doesn't have the exact same system as you do, but he has the same type of systems in order to control his rehabs. Like you're talking about, there's not going to be arguments over what's done to the property or what materials are used because you've implemented that system. I'm assuming that came from a failed flip in the past where you were, like you were talking about, why is the grout the wrong color? Why didn't that cabinet get painted? How long did it take you to develop those systems?
Oh, it's taken a long time, and to your credit, I appreciate you saying from one failed flip. Let's go with dozens that just you're like, well, or they're not on budget. So one of the things we preach to our guys is on time, quality, and budget, and they have to be all three. So it doesn't matter if it's perfect, but it took you 6 months to rehab a 6-week job. It doesn't matter because the holding costs crush you, and it doesn't matter if it's a beautiful picture, but all of the guts of that rehab, because we're not about making crappy rehabs that look pretty. We're about having pretty rehabs that from the inside out are perfect too, or as perfect as you can get a remodel. And so we start, one of the things that I think is really important, it's been a huge help for me personally and for our business, is we started adopting the one thing, which is also a great book, by the way, but one thing attitude, which is one thing might be something really, really big, like what does the process from start to finish of our rehabs look like? Or in our case, what we started doing was we started breaking it down by section. So the demo phase, rough-in phase, paint, carpet, flooring phase, tile, and then finish. And so we started, and if you can kind of picture, like if you put your thumb and your middle finger together and you kind of shorten the distance between those just a little bit, and then you shorten the distance between a little bit and do that a little bit more, you all of a sudden created an opportunity for that thing to run pretty well. And then you shorten the distance of all four of those together, and then you really start to see those systems work because you have built them, you have had that time and the experience to see it, to let it unfold.
Right. So outside of rehabbing properties, I want to touch base on all of things within your business. How are you acquiring these properties?
So up until literally about 2 weeks ago, it was just me. And so I was, whether it's MLS or wholesale relationships, and very few direct to seller. So I know there's a bunch of people out there with these monster direct to seller businesses, and we just have not done that. And so I've instead made it more about the relationships with the realtors and the wholesalers and stuff like that, and so we could bring value. And I would say that we're well known in our market to be a great buyer, and we're quick, we're cash, we're those kind of things where we bring the value on the way we're able to do business, and not necessarily just we might be able to pay more, we might be able to pay less, but we're going to always execute.
That's probably also helped your business within marketing costs as well, right? Because you're establishing relationships, so instead of dropping tens of thousands of dollars on pay-per-click or direct mail or things along those lines, you're able to save that money because you're building relationships yourself to bring you the properties, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. So it makes a huge difference. So we just recently brought on a new team member, and so he's both, right now just working on the acquisition piece for us and learning that business and learning, criteria. But he's also then going to be help, start the spearheading of the retail side of our business too. So, then we list all our stuff in house. We able to, acquire and have that person actually on our team, and then, growing out that retail side of the business, which would just be another leg, in our proverbial on our proverbial stool. So
Right. So I always reference the newer investors on the podcast, but you just talked about something that I think might be beneficial for the more experienced investors. A lot of us are control freaks within our business, and it sounds like you've been in charge of acquisitions for quite some time for your business. What steps are you taking to acclimate the new hire to come in and help with acquisitions, and what systems are you putting in place for that new hire?
That's a great question. So, to use the control freak example or that concept, I think a lot of times people, if there's such a control freak that they can't let go, I think oftentimes the problem, well, first of all, it's their problem, not the person coming on. The whole reason
Right.
you had them was to help. And the second, in the book E-Myth, they talk about, all of a sudden you desperately need to have that next person on your team, and so you just hire them, and you're like, hey, you're now the bookkeeper, and you answer the phone, and you run the warehouse, and you whatever. And we've done that, so don't hear me saying I haven't screwed that up royally before, because I have badly on a number of occasions. And the fact is, it's not that hard if you can be really clear on what their job is. And so, and the whole reason why you bring on help is A, it takes tasks off of your list, or B, or they're better at it than you.
Right.
And so, it took us a long while to do this, but we have a pretty decent system in hiring too. So first of all, you got to make sure the person's the right fit culturally. You want to make sure that they're fit for the job. So, we use a DISC profile. We also use a psychologist and a test specific to that kind of job. So, we want to know, hey, this person is going to be a great fit, sitting in the right seat. Jim Collins talks about sit in the right seat on the bus, go in the right direction with the right driver, with the right leadership. Mm-hmm. So, it's a lot of squirrels there. I apologize, but so when we brought them on, our systems, part of our success is my business partner and I have very different jobs and very different abilities, and he's amazing with data and numbers and systems. And I think I've referenced a million books already, but in book Traction, they talk about an integrator and a visionary. And so I'm definitely the visionary, he's the integrator. So luckily now, over the course of multiple years, we've had now systems in place, and we can say, hey, Rustin, our new acquisitions guy, this is how you do it. This is where you put the listing. And guess what? In Podio, you can literally, it tells you what to put in. Address, enter, check. Right. Beds and baths, check. What are we going to buy it for? Check. You can go through the list. So that thing's already built for you. So if you get a guy who can figure out, or girl, whatever, you can figure out, hey, this is what the value, the ARV of this property is, and this is what we can buy it for. And then I started helping him ballpark, because we have a workup built. So, hey, it needs doors, 4, just input 4. We already have our pricing in there for it. Needs paint, just enter the square footage of the house. It'll already solve it for you. So he was able to be brought into a system rather than saying, guess what, Rustin, we buy houses and you're going to follow me around all day.
Right.
Not going to work. Not very well.
Well, and you said something there that I think is so important. They might be better at that role than you are. And I think that's a humbling moment for a business owner a CEO, a founder, whatever it is, to realize. And because a lot of times I think as business owners, we think we're the best at every role within our business because we're the only person that's ever done it, right? You start off, you're solo, or you have one partner, and you do all of these things for so long, you think you're the only person who can do it. And it's amazing, like you're talking about, when you have those systems in place, if you've done the things the right way and you've built systems and you bring them on and you implement them in the system, now instead of you, the owner, doing 5 or 6 different things within your business, you take one of those things off your plate, you now become better at everything else you're doing because you have more time to work on it, and their sole focus is on that one task. They can do that one task so much better than you can do the 5 or 6 because your bandwidth is only so far as a business owner. And so that was something that I had to get used to, and I had to admit to myself that I'm not the best at everything within my business, even though it felt that way because I was the only one doing it. And so kudos to you for implementing those systems and getting someone within your business to now take that off of your plate.
Yeah. And I think the important part about that too is, it's not about whether they're better at it than you. They should be. So, I played music for a living for more than a decade before I got in real estate. And, it's one thing to be a great band leader, and it's another thing to be a great singer or a great lead guitarist or whatever. And I was the band leader. I was a good singer and I played multiple instruments, but I was never more excited in my role than when I could bring together a bunch of amazing musicians, and whether it's in a worship setting like in a church or whether it was in a rock and roll band in the middle of a bar, giant, place, and I've gotten to play for thousands of people and all this amazing stuff, but there's nothing like having multiple people who are in kind of in the same space and the groove is happening and the song is playing and everybody understands where their place is. And, I might be playing bass and the parts maybe not that exciting, but when the drums and the bass are connected and then, that it leaves all this open space for the band to play, it's the same concept. And you are doing your business in yourself an injustice if you are not letting go, because you cannot have that death grip on your business and let it breathe and grow. And it might be successful, but I can guarantee there's people not having a lot of fun and they're probably not going to stay, versus they culturally fit, they understand their job, they have autonomy to do it, and they know what the scorecard is and they know what the goals are. So, I think it takes growth on the person who's in leadership just as it does the people who are there to help do the specific jobs.
And it's amazing how much of this is a reciprocal thing. Like, you started off this interview by mentioning that you're a part of a mastermind and that's helped you within your business. I learned what we're talking about right now when I joined my first mastermind. And I got to see successful investors running successful either wholesale, buy and hold, rehab businesses. It didn't matter, but they all had similar systems. And I'm looking around and I'm going, we're lacking these systems within our business. Myself, my partner, we're doing too much. We're keeping too much close to the chest. We're not trusting people. And the reason why we weren't trusting people is because we didn't have the systems in place. So yes, that's what we started with. We put the systems in place. We were able to hire people. Those people have now flourished within their positions, and now the business is doing better. I mean, yes, it's amazing how that works. I mean, as owners, the reason why we were scared to hire people is because we knew if we hired them, they were just going to come in and fail because we had failed the business as owners.
Yes, boy, is that true. And I love one of my favorite books right now is the Extreme Ownership book, and by a guy named Jocko Willink, and he talks about He's a former Navy SEAL commander, and one of the stories he tells at the very beginning, and I won't try to explain the whole story, but basically, there's a blue on blue, which is friendly forces are firing at each other, and he's the commander of what's going on, and they have this briefing afterward, and he asks all his guys, whose fault is this? And his guys are like, it's my fault, Jocko, this is what happened, it's my fault, this is what happened. No, he says, no, one after another. He says, no, I was a commander, I was responsible, and I am the one at fault. And when I started to realize that if your team's screwing up something, it is definitely not their fault. Right. It's definitely your fault as the owner. And now, not to say, if somebody repeatedly does something over and over that they're not supposed to, that's a different problem, right? But
right.
If you didn't set the conditions for them to know what to do, and you didn't give them the training and the tools to do it and make sure that they were set, then yeah, it's totally your fault.
Right. And as owners and CEOs, that's our responsibility, and to recognize those problems and implement those solutions. And so I thank you for sharing all of that, because so often I only focus on things for newer investors, but I think that's also very beneficial for people out there that could be highly successful but frustrated. I see that a lot. People that are doing great things, but they get frustrated. They kind of burn out a little bit because they're burning themselves out within their business because they don't have those solutions. So let's talk about where your business is today. And you said you're going to do 150 flips this year. Mm-hmm. How many people are on your team outside of you and your partner and the new hire? How many people do you have on staff?
So in the office, we have 2 full-time construction project management folks. We have a construction administrator. We have a client coordinator that handles both clients and the sell side, buy and sell side transaction. And then we have the acquisition person that we mentioned. Right. And then we have probably 25 or 30 various individual contractors, and then probably another 5 or 10 larger contractors, and then we have another probably in the half dozen to a dozen trades, like in the plumbing and electrical and HVAC, that kind of stuff.
So those contractors, do you have any contractors that are on staff, or are they all separate entities that you're hiring out per project?
The 2 guys who are on our construction staff used to be, guys who swung hammers, and so we knew them very well, and that's been part of the success, being able to elevate those guys from within. So as far as like on staff swinging a hammer, we don't, and gotcha. We found that we were able to have the guys make more money by not doing that, and B, we had a lot more controls just on what was actually happening in the field, and responsibility, like between what our responsibility was to help pay for materials and pay those guys, and then the end result. So that's why we ended up ultimately switching to that specifically.
Gotcha. And you said you're going to be keeping about 1/3 of the properties that you're rehabbing this year. As far as rental properties going and keeping those long term, why don't you talk a little bit to our listeners about the importance of keeping rental properties and building that portfolio and what that means to you?
Okay, yeah. So first part of that being what are we aiming for within that, or just on the
I mean, obviously every investor has that goal of obtaining passive income, and I'm assuming that's what you're keeping these properties for. Long term, what are your goals for obtaining that passive income, and what does that look like for your business? How do y'all make those decisions on what you're going to keep and what you're going to sell, and kind of just talk about the buy and hold side of your business a little bit?
Gotcha. So, one of the things that we, and really this is kind of back to the last conversation we just had, which was, a lot of times people don't want to slow down. And so if there's a bunch of stuff and you're frustrated in your business, you might need to slow down. And so
Mm-hmm.
for us, we had to slow down and dial in the construction. And so we weren't pulling as many out of that rehab bucket as what we wanted, because into the buy and hold, because we still needed that income coming in and covering the overhead and, making the day-to-day dollars.
Right.
So, it's important to say, hey, this might not be what we want today, but in order to have what we want tomorrow, this is what we need to do today. And so that's what we did. And we really spent probably a year dialing in construction, and it takes time. So now we're starting to see the fruit of that labor and the effort, and being able to say, okay, now that we can see this machine and we understand the systems, so holding 50 or so, or I'm sorry, rather adding 50 or so this year. And I was just having this conversation in the last couple of days with my partner, and one of the things that we're really focused on is not just the number of units, but it's deleveraging that to where, it's one thing to have, 20 units or 50 units or hundreds of units, thousands of units, whatever it might be. And I do know guys with thousands of doors, especially in the multifamily. But, for us specifically, we are thinking, and I personally, both in my personal life and my personal finances, as well as in this, I am all about focusing on acquiring really high quality properties, renovating them just the same. So we're not doing anything less. We're not doing, we're not leaving work to be done at a future date. And from there, we are just paying them off like crazy. And so, I think our first target is, it's really more about the passive income number, around $100,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And it might sound like a lot to some people, and it might sound like small to others. For us, that was thinking about both covering our business. So like in a downturn scenario or a mitigating risk scenario where we don't have several properties that don't close or something like that. Our team knows, hey, we got your back. So we're going to make sure that we have that covered. And then second is just, from that standpoint, clearly, I think most people would say, hey, split between a couple people, they could probably do pretty well with
Right.
that, as if it was just straight income.
So I'm going to go back to that mastermind that I joined,
Mm-hmm.
and there were several investors within the mastermind that had lost, excuse me, that had lost everything back in 2007, 2008. And that was before I was in real estate investing.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was just coming out of college, so I was oblivious to what was going on in the world. And I took the opportunity within that mastermind to ask those investors, what are you doing different today
Mm-hmm.
than you were doing in 2007 and 2008 when you lost everything?
Yep.
And one of them said his goal, his and his partner's goal, is $100,000 a month net passive income. That's everything that they do. And so that's become my goal. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I did not
my
realize
goals
that.
on Facebook.
That's fun.
That's my goal. That's their goal. That's your goal. Yeah, it sounds like a lot, and it is. I mean, I'm not going to minimize that daunting task to get to that number, but you do get to a certain point within your business, whether you're wholesaling, buying rentals, rehabbing properties, to where you realize that it's an obtainable goal. And if you have those systems in place, that should be something that you strive for. I'm a huge advocate for the passive income. And it's funny that I hear someone in a whole nother part of the country, and you and I prior to today, outside of Facebook, we've never actually spoken. It's funny that you and I have the same exact goals there.
What was your feeling on the leverage part? What have you been thinking about in that way?
Well, I mean, to get there, I'm going to have to leverage quite a bit to get to that point. But I'm the same way with you in the fact that I'm going to try to rapidly pay those down as quickly as I can. because I have other revenue coming in within my business. So it's not like the cash flow that's coming in is going to be what's supporting me personally or the business or anything along those lines. So yes, we can rapidly pay down whatever debt that we're going to take on to acquire those properties.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
it sounds like that's similar to what you're doing because you're taking on debt to purchase these properties, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
So yeah, but you're just trying to pay it down quicker than whatever note you have on it, whether it be 15, 20, 25 years, right?
Oh yeah, a lot faster. Yeah,
Right.
we'd like to have, them paid off in years, not decades.
Exactly. And we're right there in the same place. But what is your average purchase price on a buy and hold property for you?
Are you talking about purchase before rehab, or are you talking about ARV?
Let's just say your average after you've rehabbed it. So you purchase costs, rehab, everything. Where are you at? Like, what's an average note that you're taking on a property?
Let's say between 60 and 80,000, probably.
Right. And so that's a little bit less than what we're going to have here in Dallas Fort Worth, which is why we've leveraged ourselves to other markets. So we're buying in St. Louis. San Antonio is going to be a good market for us because it's a little bit less of a price point. And then the exact polar opposite of that, let me kind of, I guess, make contradict myself. But we're also going to be buying buy and holds in Hawaii. Purchase prices are much higher, but the rental rates are extremely high. And it's almost, in St. Louis, we can get these absurd cap rates because we're buying for so low. Well, we get the same absurd cap rate in Hawaii just because the rental rate is so high. So those are some of the areas that we're going to be buying, buying holds. And that's kind of our thought process is trying to find areas where the purchase price maybe isn't as much because DFW's price point has gone so high. So, and you're in Kansas City, right? And so I don't know if you know anything about St. Louis, but is Kansas City market kind of similar to St. Louis where it's a really strong buy and hold market?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think that's why we have such a strong, turnkey buyer group that continues to buy from us. And we also have that A-class kind of property in our mind as well, although we're focused more on just this market since we're here. But looking at those A-class, $250,000, $300,000 houses, just more as an annuity in a potential appreciating play as well. So, and it's a lot easier to start thinking about that stuff when you have other income like streams like you're talking about. And so, if you are the newer investor right now, all of this sounds really awesome and exciting, and it is. And I think it's so important to write those goals out, what it looks like. But it's also important to focus on what the one thing is right now. So whether it's in your business or ours, we had to focus on, okay, well, let's make sure we're just buying turnkey houses right now. We know how to do it. We know how to start it. We know how to, the middle part, we know how to finish it. Okay, let's dial in our acquisitions. Let's make sure we're clear on that from the construction side. And so we can be a little more picky, or we can be faster because we know it's a little more clear. And then, once that's running and it's producing the result you want, then it's so much easier to then say, okay, cool. Well, let's start adding, for every X number we're flipping, we can keep one. And, plus you'll be happy with the rehab because hey, okay, we got we bought it right. We got the construction right. And now you have a great property that you'll be happy keeping long-term.
Right. And you brought up writing out your goals and how important that is. Yes, I had some big goals for 2018, but every year I create this like PDF of all the different goals that I have, and I always go back and look at them. It was just a couple of years ago where one of my goals was buy my first rental property. And now this year it's get to 100K net a month in passive income. So it can you can quickly grow within this industry if you have that constant action. You're networking with people, you're learning, go into those masterminds, those RIAs and things along those lines. Let's talk about your why. what is your driving force behind all of this? Getting that passive income, growing your business. What's your why?
My why is a number of things fold. So it's, first of all, financial security, legacy wealth for my family to kids want to go to school or we want to travel the world for a year. We homeschool. So we've built our family life around that. And, second, it is to build something cool and have fun doing it and enjoy the process of that, good and bad. And then, it's also to be able to, do certain things, whether it's traveling. We love to travel in our family, and we love to do just cool stuff, adventure, whatever. I'm starting to actually have my first flight lesson Thursday, so it's been a lifelong dream. Thank you. And so, and then there's another piece, which is I grew up in the church, and I have had amazing experiences. Last year I was in Haiti a couple of times, in Honduras, and probably headed back in the next couple of months to Haiti. And so there's a bunch of people, both domestic and international, that need help. And so my wife and I are very philanthropically minded. I'm not going to try to say that 2 times fast, by the way. And so, I'd like to get to a place where we're giving away $100,000, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million a year in a foundation with our family, and doing that is, within the construct of arts, health, and education, and really, make a dent in whatever we can make with resources and skills and people we have. So.
Love it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so you said you love traveling.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to pick one place in the world that you could travel to today, where would it be?
I think that probably would be Spain. We've talked about doing a month or 2 in Spain, and so it's kind of been at the top of the list for a while. But a plane ticket and a passport, man, there's probably not many places I wouldn't be traveling to if I had that.
Man, I thought with that big old beard you were going to say Iceland. That's what I was going with. So, all right. So, in where do you want to be in 5 years?
In 5 years, I want our business to function, effectively without me and without our team. Not that we don't have a spot, but that we have it built out to a place where it does function, and it's we're better and better able to take care of our people who have taken great care of us, and we're better and better able to help in our community, whether it's giving away a house to a veteran, or there's a lot of these things I want to be able to do. And I want my personal residence paid for. I want to have no debt. I want to be able to just do what we want, have 100 plus, 200 plus rentals paid for, and 3 or 4 different businesses that are growing and doing amazing things. And then at that point, the financial piece is not really the concern. Now it's kind of looking at those other things. So I have a coffee business idea. I have I've always thought about owning a winery, and then my wife and I, we just moved to a place with 11 acres, and so I want to have a little tractor and jacking around on the property and hanging out with my kids. So that's what it looks like, I think.
You sound like me, man. You're like, I got this coffee business, and I'm over here going, I got a comic book store I want to open, and I want to get into horse racing. And, it's amazing the things that, being an entrepreneur and being in real estate can open up to you. For our listeners that want to reach out and contact you, what's the best way they can reach you?
Two ways. You can find me on Facebook, just Nathan Brooks. And then you can also, if you're interested in the turnkey stuff or what we do at Bridge, you can go to bridgeturnkey.com and check us out there. So both places would be great.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you sitting down and sharing everything you did with us. I know you're an extremely busy guy, but I appreciate you giving back and doing these podcasts, not only this one, but the other ones that you've done in the past to try to, spread the message about real estate investing and educating other investors. So thank you for sitting down with us today.
It's my pleasure, and I appreciate you too, RJ.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Thanks so much for listening to the Titanium Vault with your host, RJ Bates III. For more info and to stay up to date, visit www.podcast.thetitaniumvault.com and on facebook.com/The Titanium Vault. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review, and we'll catch you next time on the Titanium Vault.